Hello, and welcome to another tribal council for the Tendua tribe. We are getting down to the wire in our game of Survivor Hamilton Old Mates New. We are down to our top 6 players. April won her first individual immunity on Monday, despite a little bit of an error in my questions, which is not the first time this season, and maybe we'll get to that. But April and a number of other players figured out what I meant the answer to be anyway, which was a nice relief for me, but maybe not for a couple of the other players who spent maybe extra time trying to figure it out. But anyway, April has immunity, so she will not be voted out today. The rest of you are certainly in danger of going home today, and there's not so many people to pick from anymore. So April hasn't joined the call yet, so we'll ask her about immunity when she joins. But Graham, I wanted to throw it to you first and ask if you can walk us through a little bit of what happened at the last tribal council when Chris was bombarded by rewards to get sent home.
So playing the idol nullifier was, we didn't know who had the idol. We didn't know who was going to have it played for. So playing that reward was really just a guarantee. We would have, Brian, April, and I would have preferred to not have to use any advantages at all, but we knew that we weren't going to be able to get 4 people to vote how we were hoping, whether that be for John, for Chris, for James, or even I guess for Jordan. And so we knew that we had to at least play the vote swap. And when none of us got the idol, we knew that we had to do something to guarantee this, because it would probably be, the most important vote yet. So we're like, let's just use 2 rewards, and let's use it on the person who's going to expect it the least.
So why did you choose Chris out of the 4 players that you thought were on the other side of the vote?
I think because his name hadn't really been brought up before. So it was one of those things where, as I said, it was just unexpected. Nothing against Chris. It just was how it shaked out.
So, Jordan, it sounds like what Graham was describing was a scenario where he, April, and Brian found themselves on the bottom of the 7. So 3 out of the 7 votes, which means that you were on the other side with the bastards. How did that change, or how did that switch come around from working with Graham, at least for a couple votes, working against him?
I think it was just post-merge when I started chatting with Chris more, and I guess we had originally talked about maybe working more closely together, like myself and Graham and Chris, and what that might look like. Graham and I were obviously on Kobara together, and we were kind of just working through what might look like. And then obviously when you put everybody together and everybody starts having conversations and building different relationships, and you add Brian and April's alliance and obvious friendship into that mix as well, with April and Graham being married, it just adds an additional layer to an already complicated and layered post-merge scenario. So I think you try and vote in a way that, like I've always said, you try and vote in a way that you feel good about, that you can get behind your game, but you also try and vote in a way that you don't end up, involuntarily sacrificing somebody or putting somebody else in jeopardy that you don't want to put in jeopardy. So I think over the last few votes, we've defined a little bit of lines. I've made a couple rogue votes, which has obviously not built a great, trust tree with Graham and Brian and April. And, I think just organically, it just kind of started developing its own lines. So I can't say exactly when. I would say over the last few votes, it's just started to form.
Thanks, George. Brian, walk us through what last tribal council was like for you, receiving just over half the votes, but then seeing that get reversed in your favor.
Yeah, so like I was out at Walmart or something like that, picking up some stuff, and it was like right when 8 hit, and I messaged Chris and said like, sorry, like I voted for you. He's like, okay, like, and at that point he never told me that he voted for me. I think he was still thinking that he had me until all the stuff came out. But knowing what came out, knowing that there was that many rewards played, I assumed that there could have been another reward that could have swung it back the other way. So I was waiting with like bated breath the whole time.
Was that the closest you felt like to that you would be going home all season long?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, there was the one with the 2 votes on me and the 1 vote for Dave, where I played my idol. That was really close too, I guess. Those would be the 2 times, I guess.
And did it feel pretty good to see all the hard work it sounds like that you and Graham and April put in, see it pay off successfully, and see Chris sent packing?
Well, I wasn't going to see Chris sent packing. It was nothing personal with him. It was good to see a plan come together like that, I guess, and that everything was used successfully. I've been on like, I think if I look at it, I've probably been on just as many votes for as I have been against. So it's been back and forth. So every time you put in a lot of work and it doesn't go your way, it gets a little frustrating. So having it go your way, even if it's just a simple vote, is always a good thing.
Yeah, you're right. Everybody's hovering around 50% in terms of the votes that they've been right on and votes that they've been wrong on. So you're not wrong that it's been pretty close for everybody, yourself included. James, you obviously have been working with Chris since the very beginning of the game, when you were almost the first person voted out of Kobara. When you watched that play out and then you saw Chris get voted out, what did you think about your chances in the rest of the game, or what you would have to do to get yourself further, knowing that Chris wasn't around anymore?
Yeah, I mean, it sucks seeing Chris go. Like I say he's the Michael Jordan to my Scottie Pippen. Well, according to Kyle, I'm more of Bill Wennington than Scottie Pippen, but yeah, he's the glue that held the Bastards together, and because of him, like that. I personally didn't have to make a whole lot of moves because, the dynamic between us is that, Chris is a loud one and I'm more of the guy in the background. And yeah, definitely see him go was shocking, especially, we knew that we had the idol and Chris played it. And to have Graham play that idol nullifier was, that was good, very good move by him, and definitely blindsided us. And yeah, it definitely made me have to work a lot harder today than any other time. Yeah, we'll see how I did today.
Did it help being in Ontario now and being in the same time zone and not working?
Oh yeah, definitely. Like having, I mean, I still didn't win any challenges, especially the one that you sent last night.
Yeah.
Ironically, I go to bed early, trying to catch, trying to adjust to the Eastern time zone, and yeah, you sent the challenge at 10:30 p.m., which would have been 7:30 p.m.
Yeah.
My time back home. So yeah, I'm just kicking myself, but whatever. Like, it is what it is, and yeah. Hopefully, right. I could have really used that idol today. So yeah.
Fair enough, man. Yeah, I thought I was helping you out a little bit with that, and I forgot that you're here already.
Yeah.
John, is this, after Chris went home, is this the most vulnerable you felt in the game in a while, or how are you feeling going into this vote today?
Well, I think when Chris was around, we were always vulnerable, right? I think obviously with three bastards around, you're an obvious target. So it just happened to be that they chose Chris, right? They could have picked any of us and we'd all be going home right now, right? They just decided to go on Chris. So I think we knew once it was starting to get less and less, we knew that there would be just these times where each vote you go to, you're going to be on the block on some level, right? Unless you've got that nice necklace around your neck, or you have an idol sitting in your pocket, you're vulnerable almost all the time, right?
So what did you do today in terms of, now there's only two of you. Do you think that gives you a better chance at working with the other players, or is it more difficult?
It's different. I guess it's difficult just because I guess the remaining players we haven't worked with as much. Like James said, it was mostly Chris doing most of the talking. So when Chris would bring things back to us, we would sort of analyze it and sort of think it through and say pick which option's best. But I think now it's trying to get the trust of the remaining players.
Right. Thanks, John. Jordan, I know you've started working with James and John a little bit over the past few votes. I know it may not be super easy to build trust with people you haven't met and you haven't really worked on, but is one option or one way of doing that just identifying where your own interests align and how working together can benefit each other? And is that a pretty good way to build at least trust in a short period of time?
Yeah, definitely. And, you don't really go into a tribal council knowing, at least on the for in this case on the Tuesday, you don't really go into the Tuesday being like, okay, I know exactly how I'm voting tomorrow, because no tribal council in the last dozen has ever been solved on a Tuesday morning. So in this case, it's more try and understand where people's minds are, what are the threats, who's being targeted, is there going to be a reward, when does that reward come out, and then try and figure out, at this stage in the game, am I personally at risk? If you have an alliance at this point, is my person or people in the other alliance at risk as well? And then basically reach out to those people that you think can help you personally. So it's one way that you don't really know. Like, you can try and build trust that way, but you don't really know if that information is getting to somebody else. So you end up being a little bit hesitant in regards to what you're saying, especially when it becomes closer to the voting period, where you're like, am I saying too much? Am I not saying enough? Is this? And everybody starts getting a little bit paranoid. But if you can start building trust with people that you haven't connected with throughout the game at this stage, then maybe it will work out. Maybe it won't.
Thanks, man. Brian, looking across the aisle at James and John, are there some areas where you can see, your interests do align, and even if you haven't worked together the whole game, you could at least find some places where it might make sense to, even at this point in the game, switch sides or use one or both of them to help yourself get further?
Yeah, that's definitely something that I thought of, and I thought of it with the Chris vote last time too. But it's difficult, like John said, not working with them, and everyone's sort of paranoid at this point of the game. That when you try to work with them, and then you get not anything particular, but you don't get the responses that you're used to getting back with people that you have worked with. And then you start hearing other things, and you maybe you're paranoid, you piece things together. It sort of plays in your head. And last vote, I had the feeling, even before Chris, I assume accidentally said he was voting for me in the group chat.
Yeah, I saw that.
Had that feeling that that was all going down. So yeah, it's you have that feeling, and then you are vindicated once. Who knows what happens a second time? I've always said that I would work with anyone and trust anyone, but at a certain point, it's also hard to do that.
Do you, is there at any point in the game where you foresee yourself being worried about a pair like John and James, or April and Graham more so than apparent individuals like yourself and Jordan?
Not necessarily. I mean, I've worked with April and Graham. It's always the middle people like Jordan picking a side and voting against me is what would more likely kill me. Like it could be April and Graham too, or it could be everyone. But I think that's like the more likely scenario that plays through my head.
What about in the final three? In that type of scenario, if you're with a closer pair, do you just hope that you can win the challenge, or do you still hope?
I hope it's not a challenge that lends itself to two people working together in the same room, like a selfie challenge or something. And I hope that I can win that. Honestly,
that's been the hardest challenge for me all season long, has been the idea that people are helping each other with challenges, and like the next time around there's got to be some way to figure out how to not help that happen, because I know for a fact there's some challenges where not even just like Graham and April working together in the same room, but other people have completely stepped in and done or answered challenges or given people the answers, and it's had a big impact on who's won rewards and who's
I don't mind that so much, because that's just like anyone can get help. Everyone's sort of on an even keel, but having two people together, and like I guess everyone could get their partners to do it, but I don't think Andrea would want to be involved at all. So, I mean, I don't think it's a huge deal, but it's another facet that people might take into account when they're looking at who's left, I guess.
Right. Thanks, man. James, you mentioned today that you were working hard, to stick around in the game. Can you talk a little bit about what your strategy is and the pitch that you were trying to make to some other players?
Yeah, I guess. Well, yeah. I mean, I've spoken to Brian a lot more than that I would have done. Yeah, more today than I've ever done throughout the entire game. Spoken to Jordan, more times today than any time throughout the game. John and I chatted. Spoken a little to April and Graham, but knowing where April and Graham stand, like it's kind of obvious they're together, and knowing where they stand, like you can't, I can't share too much strategy, and I know they weren't going to share too much strategy with me. So yeah, like today I was talking to pretty much everyone, back and forth. It is nice that there's only 6 of us. Like, I mean, kudos to big players like Chris, Kyle, Chelsea, and even Graham and Brian throughout the whole game. They've been talking to I don't know if they've been talking to the entire tribe, but when there's more than 10 people and you got to reach out to everyone and trying to coordinate blind sides or this and that, like that is a lot of work. 6 people today, me on vacation here in Ontario. It was manageable, definitely manageable. And yeah, that's what I did. And like I keep saying, let's see how I did today. I could have completely failed. Who knows?
Thanks, James. April, nice to see you. Can you talk a little bit about how it feels to be wearing the immunity necklace for the first time, figuratively wearing the immunity necklace today for the first time, and not have to worry about getting any votes today?
Yeah, I mean, it was nice to wear it. I don't have to sweat as much today, but I still have to think about what's going to happen next time, right? So that was kind of on my mind today. And there's people that I'm working with that are still out in the open that I'm worried about too, right? Because I think when you get down to numbers like this, every single vote has some sort of effect or can have some sort of negative effect on your game.
Right. And do you want to talk a little bit about how answering the question worked or didn't work, considering I messed up one of the clues?
Yeah, I mean, I thought it would have been really easy because I used the advantage. I didn't know how much time I was going to have. But I got hung up on the J thing, the J and the I. And I was like, what the fuck? Like, this doesn't make any sense. And I kept saying, I'm pretty sure it's survive or it's survivor. It seems like that's what it would be. but this J thing doesn't make any sense. And I'm like, well, what else could it be? It can't be anything. And it was just like, Graham's like, it's got to be survive. It's got to be like a mess up. I'm like, all right, I'll send it in. But I was worried that I knew that everybody else had the challenge by then, that if I like got something wrong, I bombed it and wasted an advantage.
Well, and nobody told me about the error until I think Brian messaged me, but it was like after everyone had already answered for the most part, and I was like, oh, I wish someone had just messaged me early, like said, hey, is this supposed to be an I or something? Maybe could have messaged everybody, but at the end of the day, we figured it out. And
what is it, Michael? Do you want them to send only one message, or do you want them to clarify?
They know they can clarify on text messages. They just can't use WhatsApp. But Meg, you wouldn't know that because you're not in the challenges. But
I'm just roasting.
Well, I know. Well, it's helped me realize, and I wrote this in the post, that next season or next time we do this, I'm just gonna outsource the challenges altogether, man. Because it's I'd rather not have to worry about the double checking everything and making them hard but not too hard, accurate every single time, not easily Googleable. And it's just too much for me, too much stress, and then having to also debate with people if there's a bit of an interpretation issue. I don't want to be doing that anymore. Anyway, but thanks for your patience. You guys all handled it really, really well, and I appreciate it. John, this is your 19th tribal council, I believe.
That's what Chelsea says.
Yeah, trust Chelsea with that. Are you surprised you've survived this long and going to as many tribals as you have? Like, does it feel like you're just happy to still be alive, or like, how does it feel to have been to so many tribal councils this game?
It's making my wife really upset. Every week or every few times, I'm like, I think I'm going home today. And then I luckily escape the vote, or they target someone else. But yeah, I guess I don't know anything different, right? I saw when we first started, and us and Navala went on all those tribals. It was just like, oh, this is the game. This is the normal game. When everybody on Kobara was like, man, I'm so bored. Maybe I should throw it. I don't know what to do. So now that you come to this last part, it's just, this is the gig, right? Like, we've made it this far, right? You're just going to be like, okay, this is what is left. There's only like 10 days left before we get to the end, right? So I think it's just something that we've sort of been used to, right? Like, I've been used to, sort of, and I think because of COVID and being at home with my son, it's a bit easier. So that's just where I am.
Thanks, John. I asked James about this, John, but what's the case that you make, knowing you're up against Graham and April, who are a tight two at this point in the game, plus they have Brian, who April's been working with since Ulu. Like, what's the case that you can make to try and get someone like a Brian to flip, or even a Graham or an April to turn against each other? Like how do you even go about making that pitch?
I think you just tell the facts, right? Like, the facts aren't hard to, like, it's not like I'm lying about them. It's not like I'm telling them this or telling them that. It's just whether you like those facts and whether you think it gives you the best chance to win. I think we all look at the players left and we're like, okay, what gives me the best chance to win, right? And if that means I've got to just stay with April and Graham, as Brian has done for the last few votes, then that's what he has to do, right? Like, he doesn't have many quote unquote like 100% allies, right? He's got a few strong ones. He hasn't gone against them yet, but I think everybody's just trying to play to win the game now, right? So try to take that person out, or maybe just try to survive the vote, right?
So what are those facts you mentioned in terms of,
I think Brian already said the first one, right? I think the biggest one is you're playing against two people, right? And it's one thing where it's like, my partner is invested, but they're also invested in the sense that they technically have like 2 chances to get the question right. So one person can like rush the question really quickly, and if they get it wrong, there's still a chance that somebody in their house can get it. So it's really tough playing like that. And they're using it like but those are the cards they're given, right? They didn't do anything illegal. They didn't do anything wrong. And I'm pretty sure on like 5-part questions or 10-part, like 6-part questions, they just split the question up, right? So if I'm doing it by myself, I got to be like, okay, I got to go through all of these 6 if they're smart about it, they go through half each, and then they sort of, right? Like, in theory, it should be faster. And sometimes when they say the answers, I'm just like, man, how did you get it so fast? And that's what I think. I think they're working together, and I don't blame them, right? Like, it makes sense to work together. Like, two brains are better than one, right?
Mm-hmm. Jordan, I saw you nodding there. Is that sort of something that you wish you didn't have to agree with, but you do?
Yeah, like obviously it'd be like, again, like Brian said, and like John just reiterated, it'd be nice to call Claudia and be like, hey, Claudia, come help me with this, and be as excited and intense as I am.
There's no chance, Claudio.
Not a chance, right? So, you know, they're not doing anything wrong. This is the way it is. They're both engaged. This is a game. They have a competitive advantage, and they're working on it. And, you know, do I wish I had the same thing? Of course. Am I, you know, do I hate them for it? Absolutely not. It's the way that it goes. And at the end of the day, it doesn't mean that they'll always be faster or they'll always be right. And that comes down to, you know, being aggressive and being intense. And, you know, in my case, taking my time is better than rushing. So you just got to do what you got to do. And right now they're in a pretty sweet spot. So I'll support that.
Thanks. Graham, how do you respond to that? Do you just agree outright, or is it more complicated than what the way that they're describing it?
Well, I'd say, you know, the last few votes, it's certainly been helpful to us to be able to work together, especially on some of the longer questions or the multi-part questions. We can split it up, for instance. But there have been instances where we've just been working on the same question side by side, but not together. And we've actually screwed each other up before as well, just because, you know, one person can influence another person. If they have an idea and it happens to be the wrong one, then somebody who might have got the right answer ends up getting the wrong answer. But also, for the majority of the game, we were on different teams. So we'd be working on challenges at the same time in the same room, but totally against each other. So it's only been recently that it's actually been benefiting us. And, you know, even since merge, more often than not, us working together has done more harm than good, except for the last, you know, 3 votes where it's benefited us greatly.
April, any thoughts on that topic?
Yeah. I think my answer might be a little bit different, but he's right. Like before merge, it was actually a bit of a deterrent, especially the ones that were selfies. I'm a vocal person, so when they would come through, I'd say axe or apple or something, and he would know that the challenge was up, and he would run and grab whatever I said out loud for himself.
That's her perspective. That's her perspective.
So it got a little bit annoying sometimes. But even, you know, afterwards, initially, I mean, we're obviously a couple. We don't always communicate well with each other. So there's been a couple of like issues with the first couple of challenges that came through that we tried to work together. And he just kind of like zeroes in on something and doesn't communicate with me. And if I ask a question, I'm trying to help, then we've screwed each other up that way. But I think we've gotten a little bit better at that. But if something totally new gets thrown at us, like the triangle thing the other night, like we didn't work on that together at all.
Which is why maybe neither of us got it right.
Well, yeah, but.
Right. Okay, awesome. Thanks, guys. James, do you think that, you know, players getting to the final 4 or even the final 3 with Graham and April as such a tight 2 need to be really worried about that scenario? Because it's basically like 2 against 1 or 2 against, you know, 1 and 1?
Oh, for sure. Like, I mean, I like both Graham and April, but I don't care what they say. Like, when a challenge comes in, like 2 brains better than 1 brain, you know, like they're going to be working together. And, you know, at least it's, you know, like when it goes down to 4 people, you know, that's 50% chance of winning. And I mean, whoever, like between the 2, whoever takes the immunity, the other person's relatively safe, you know, because, yeah, I just think that that's a huge threat in this game. Working on challenges together, and yeah, I think we all know that. I think we all know that, and definitely kept that in mind for this vote. And I'm sure that people are going to keep that in mind for the next 2 votes as well.
Thanks, man. Brian, I can understand how there is a certain advantage to working with the Graham and April, because that's 2 votes that you can trust on along with your own vote, right? And at this point in the game, that's a majority. But at what point do those 2 votes become a negative for you, because they're votes that are gonna help each other and and not necessarily help you anymore?
This vote, maybe. This vote going forward, it starts becoming a little bit trickier, I think. But yeah, I mean, it comes down to trust and who you can trust and who you can't, I guess, too, and what kind of gut feeling the last little bit. I mean, I think Kyle brought up before that we talked about it a few times, and every time we're like, do we think this is going to happen? And we're like, no, let's just trust our plan and go forward with it. But we always had that gut feeling that would happen, and it happened a fair bit, and I've been trying to pay attention to that a little bit more.
Right, man. Are you nervous at all about a 3-3 tie today and drawing rocks?
No, I've done that before. I'll do it again. I don't mind. It'll sort of be cool to be, if that's what happens, to be eliminated from Survivor twice without getting voted out.
Oh, well, that's one perspective. I would be not willing to do that.
Yeah, I'm gonna look at a positive.
Fair enough. Does anybody have anything they want to add before we get to the votes today? I'm gonna stop asking.
I'd like to play my idol, please.
You would? Can you show it to us?
No.
Yeah, because you don't have one. Nice try, though, buddy. But I will say that if anybody does have a real idol that they want to play, now would be the time. No, so no idols being played today. So for the first time in a while, no idols. So all the votes will count. The person with the most votes will become the 9th member of our jury. And everybody else will be in our final 5. Here we go. First vote, James. Second vote, Graham. 1 vote James, 1 vote Graham. Third vote, Brian. 1 vote James, 1 vote Graham, 1 vote Brian. Fourth vote, James. It's 2 vote James, 1 vote Graham, 1 vote Brian. Fifth vote, Brian. That's 2 votes James, 2 votes Brian, 1 vote Graham, 1 vote left. The 25th person voted out of the game and the 9th member of our jury is James. James, buddy, you should have stayed in BC.
I should have never come here.
All right, man. Thanks, everybody. James, join us for
No,
the video.
no bye 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 music. Come on, guys. Come on, Kyle. Where's the bye 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 music?
I think there's too much respect for you to do that.
Good game, buddy.
See you, man.
Game, James.
See you guys.
Congrats,
Good game.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.